How to persist in your assumption. 4 important elements from Neville Goddard that are designed to help us remain persistent internally in our inner world, subconsciously, on the assumption that one day our definite chief aim, our desired outcome, will be realized. This is done from a place of real power, which is the world within, rather than a place of force. Thoughts, emotions, behaviors, and outer world circumstances flow to the person that is in alignment with the assumption or the ideal outcome. First, we have imagination and impression. Man is only limited by weakness of attention and poverty of imagination. The great secret is a controlled imagination and a well-sustained attention firmly and repeatedly focused on the object to be accomplished. Okay. Poverty of imagination and weakness of attention. Both of these are inherent abilities that we have that are either calibrated or miscalibrated based on the different experiences and circumstances of life. And we can recalibrate them again to be in alignment with our assumption, with the ideal outcome. The first being weakness of attention. Most attention is subconsciously controlled based on past experiences, which we call reactivity. If we're unable to stay attentive to what we have to do, when we have to do it, and cross-reference it towards our definite chief aim or our ideal outcome, it is because something in the 5-sensory data world has taken our attention away and we have become reactive to it. In other words, we call it losing focus. Now, this is what he refers to when he says weakness of attention, because it's contrast. We have a desire to stay in attention towards our definite chief aim, and when we experience weakness of attention, this is cause for reflection. We can take a moment and realize that perhaps we are being reactive to whatever has shown up in the 5-sensory data world, and the reactivity is really disempowering meaning from past programming or unrelated programming information that is being interpreted from the world within and associated to the 5-sensory data. So we can then take note of this and evolve using one of the subconscious mind modalities, which I'll put a link in the description, to change our beliefs, assumptions, and meaning of association to that 5-sensory data to be in alignment with multiplying our persistence and seeing the 5-sensory data as contributing and related to and evolving and empowering in nature towards the desired outcome. Now, he also says poverty of imagination. In other words, imagination is something that we all have and we have the ability to cultivate, or we do not put much emphasis on it and do not cultivate it. See, the truth is that we are either impressed on our subconscious mind by 5-sensory data or data via the 6th sense, which is in our imagination, or a combination. Our goal is to evolve ourselves and continue to cultivate our ability to imagine and thus impress our subconscious mind to create what we desire from the place of impressing our subconscious mind and having it externalize as behaviors, thoughts, emotions, and outer world circumstances in relation, in correlation to the desired outcome. And thus he says, the great secret is a controlled imagination. Developing your imagination and guiding it towards a definite chief aim. Now, this is done through the other few steps we're going to talk about in a moment. Mental diets, realizing that the world is a reflection of you, in other words, you pushed out, and revision of your past, which contains the past programming that may appear to deny the assumption that you will create the outcome that you desire. And the firmness and repeatedly focusing on the object to be accomplished is subconscious. We don't want to force this because what we resist persists. Rather look at this as a revelation of what shows up as hindrances, as a reflection opportunity to change the programming within, evolve it within to be in alignment with what we desire to create. He says, I say imagination creates reality, and if this premise is true, then imagination fulfills itself in what your life becomes. Okay, so imagination creates reality. What is brought forth has once been in your imagination or the imagination of others. And we once imagined it and it was brought forth. Much of our imagination has been stimulated by five sensory data, and we can take the power back and stimulate it via the sixth sense. In other words, creating a imaginal scene or the desired outcome and having that impress in the subconscious mind till it's brought forth. And so we do this by working with the power of our subconscious mind through exercising our ability to cultivate and utilize our imagination. We all have this ability. We can further develop it, and I'll share an exercise in doing so. With your eyes closed and your physical body immobilized, induce a state akin to sleep and enter into the action as though you were an actor playing the part. Experience in your imagination what you would experience in the flesh, where you're now in possession of your objective. Make elsewhere here and then now. And the greater you, using a larger focus, will use all means, and call them good, which tend towards the production of that which you have assumed. So Neville refers to state akin to sleep as a state that you go into, theta state of mind or brainwave, that is prior to falling asleep, in which the conscious mind is starting to slip away out of the equation of awareness. And as a result, the subconscious is more receptive and open. The conscious mind is engaged just enough to imagine the ideal outcome, the vision, or you could use subconscious mind audios or affirmations while in state akin to sleep to impress the subconscious mind and externalize it in reality in the days to come. This is how we reprogram the subconscious mind, and this is how we impress the subconscious mind via our imagination. So it would be then a good idea to exercise and practice imagination, so when we find ourselves in a state akin to sleep, we can be more vivid and detailed in our imagination to really impress the subconscious mind with specificity. Here's a good exercise that can develop your imagination. Step number 1, close your eyes and breathe deeply as you release your thoughts. Then, visualize that you are stepping into your scene. Look to the right. What do you see? Take your time to really visualize what you see. This should take a couple minutes. Allow yourself to see the colors, shapes, and notice the details. Let's say it was an ideal beach house that you would like to have, a vacation property. What does it look like when you step out from the front doorstep? Look to the right. Take 2 minutes and visualize all that you see with detail. Then, look to the left. What do you see? Again, take your time to really visualize what you see. Just take a couple minutes and allow yourself to see the colors, shapes, and notice the details. Engage your senses in your imagination. Once you have viewed each side, repeat step 2 and 3 while filling in more details, looking to the left and then to the right, a couple minutes each side. As you do this, you are practicing developing your imagination. You could dedicate 30 minutes every day to do this, or you could do this as a practice and something that will impress your subconscious mind in a state akin to sleep. As you continue to do this, you'll notice that you'll develop your abilities to a higher degree, or you'll recalibrate a already existing ability to work with your imagination and impress the subconscious mind. What you'll also notice is that thoughts, emotions, behaviors, and outer world circumstances in the days that follow will be more in alignment with your assumption, which is the ideal outcome. If you're doing this and you notice that people, environment, circumstance, and information are synchronistic in nature and related to your assumption, more so, then you are persisting in the assumption without using force. It's done in the subconscious mind. The next thing we can do is mental diets. Neville says, if one could only control these inner conversations, morning, noon, and night, and carry them into the dream world, he would know what world he is creating. Stop for one moment and ask yourself, what am I thinking now? You are carrying on a little tiny inner speech at every moment of time. Now, at any moment, when we are consciously awake, we are conversing with ourselves. We are conversing and interpreting, assuming and believing reality to work a certain way with people, environment, circumstance, and information. Thus, it's important, then, to surround ourselves with information that uplifts us and encourages us and is in alignment with the assumption or the ideal outcome. And so, the kind of information we take in through the various sources of information has an ability to control our inner conversations. Thus, we want to make a commitment to choose the information that is in alignment, empowering information related to ourselves and others. We might think that if we are speaking disempowering or we are consuming disempowering on another person, that it is about them. But it'll go back to my next point, which is the world is you externalized. So we are actually affirming it in ourselves, about ourselves. He says, the whole thing is before you. You can choose death if you want, because the word is your tongue. It is in your mouth. It is in your heart. And you can do it now. You don't have to ask who will go up to heaven and bring it down for me, or go into the depths and bring it up for me. It is now nearer than you know, in your mouth and in your heart, that you can do now. Well, what would you do now? What sentence would imply that you are now what you would like to be? When we're communicating to ourselves and others, it's important that we are aware of our communication and that we make sure that it is in alignment with our assumption. We do not speak of denial, or that it is not so right now and that it is frustrating, or it is not showing up and it is causing us stress. And while it logically might seem like the right thing to do, we are further impressing and affirming it in our subconscious mind. Instead, we realize more and more so that the outer world is revealing to us data elements of our assumptions and our beliefs. And through conversation and reflection and evolving our subconscious programming within, we can believe it to be in alignment with our definite chief aim or our outcome. This is what we call persistence in the assumption. If five sensory data may appear to deny it, then the appearing to deny it is really in the world within. It is not the five sensory data, but the assumption within that is indicating the denial. And this is usually found through reactivity. So we then can evolve our programming within by consuming information that is supportive, in harmony, and in alignment with our assumption, and release ourselves from the information that is misalignment. This is not to be in denial, but rather from a place of understanding, realizing that there are many opinions about a subject or a topic or a end result, and you are simply choosing that what is more in alignment, which is in harmony with your assumption or your definite chief aim. This is a conscious choosing, realizing that your inner conversations create your reality, and your inner conversations are stimulated by your subconscious mind from past programming, what you imagine, five sensory data, the outer world information that you take in, and it's your interpretation of this information that stimulates the inner conversation. And your inner conversation externalizes as people, environment, and circumstance and information to reflect. Your thought is speech. It must be actually invested, not wasted. And your money. Everything must be invested and not wasted. A thought is an investment. What you think about will be brought forth as return on investment. The kind of information we take in stimulates our thought, which produces the return on investment. So what are we investing in? Are we investing in the assumption, or are we investing in the denial of the assumption in our communication and the information that we take in? Always remember then when we are taking in information, that we strip away the assumptions and beliefs from that information that is not in harmony with the ideal assumption. We look at it for what it is and understand that perhaps it's somebody else's opinion, and that's okay. But rather, the opinion that matters is the one that is in alignment with the assumption. By honoring that information, impressing it on the subconscious mind, and having self-talk surrounding that information in relation to the assumption, we are able to automatically remain persistent in the assumption. This is not done from a place of force, but rather from power, which is imagination in the world within, by stimulating imagination by what is in harmony and related to the assumption. The next concept is very important. Neville's "you pushed out, the world as you pushed out." He says, but when you catch yourself going back to the old record, just put on the new record again, and the new one will become just as easy to play and as natural to play as the old one is now. So when we look at the outer world, we say, how are we interpreting it? Are we interpreting it from the perspective of in alignment with the assumption or misalignment with the assumption? If we interpret it from the perspective of misalignment with the assumption, then we are playing the old record. So we go in and we change our beliefs and assumptions surrounding the five sensory data, and we put on the new record, affirmation statements, imaginal acts, and revision that is in alignment with the assumption that we want to see brought forth. The whole manifested world goes to show us what use we have made of God's gift. Receiving a gift does not mean that we are going to use it wisely, but we have the gift. Everyone has the gift, and the world simply reflects the use of that gift. And that gift is imagination, the power to reprogram your subconscious mind via your imagination. You impress your subconscious mind via your imagination by the thoughts, emotions, and vivid detail and inner conversations that you have every day, and interpretation of the five sensory data, and that is further impressing the subconscious mind. And if it's in harmony with your definite chief aim, then you will see the outer world circumstances and your thoughts, emotions, and behaviors reflect. This is the power that we have. We have the power of imagination. We have the ability then to take five sensory data, which appears a certain way, and within our imagination, change it. So the world is you pushed out. All people, environment, circumstance, and information represents the programming that is within. And if we don't change the programming within, it'll continue to externalize the same way, which may or may not be in a harmony with our assumption. And that is up to us to cross-reference and decide. If it appears to be in denial of the assumption, and we want to persist in our assumption, then we reflect upon the world as objective data, as optimization data, to understand that what is being expressed has been impressed at one point in the subconscious mind, either through past five sensory data and meaning or our imagination. And we cross-reference using modalities like revision, which we're going to talk about next, to evolve the programming within to be in alignment so that we can maintain the assumption from a place of real power rather than force. We do not force the assumption by changing the outer world, but rather persist in the assumption by evolving the inner world and bringing it more into alignment with the assumption. He says, so I ask you to really apply it. Don't think for 1 second that knowing what to do is going to do anything for you. It's the doing it that matters. So if every moment of time you know what to do, then do it. If you find yourself carrying on any negative conversation, break it. Even though it gives you pleasure, as it does many people, they find such fun in being critical. They think they are alone and no one sees them. So it doesn't matter. No one sees you. The only one that matters sees you every moment of time, and that's your Father. He sees into the very depths of your being, and he knows exactly what you are doing. And your world is built out of these inner conversations. So today, if you are not satisfied with the world in which you live, blame no one, but turn within to these two gifts and use them wisely. For here we are told to order our life according to our conversations. Our inner conversations reflect in the outer world, and we can cross-reference the outer world back to our inner conversations. The gift of our imagination can impress the subconscious mind when we imagine and converse and stimulate our imagination to be in alignment with the assumption that we will create what we desire. This impression on the subconscious mind will externalize accordingly, and these gifts of inner conversation and imagination are available to use for anybody. So he says, so what are you saying at every moment of time? Watch it, be careful what you are saying, because your whole vast world is this inner conversation pushed out. Okay? Your whole vast world is this inner conversation pushed out. Now, if you're hearing this and it resonates with you, then you are at the level of consciousness to understand to a higher degree, more so than ever before, the cross-reference between the words that you speak, your inner conversations, how you believe reality to work, and the externalization of it in people, environments, circumstance, and information. And rather than recreating it from what has been expressed from past, you go in and evolve the conversation within to be in alignment with the assumption, the desired outcome. This is not only the process for bringing forth what you desire, but the process of evolution of yourself within into higher states of consciousness. The higher the consciousness, the greater the ability to cross-reference and reflect upon how the whole vast world is this inner conversation pushed out. And you can change it only by changing the conversation, because the conversation is equated with your nature. Now, the final point is revision. This exercise is very powerful if you do it at the end of the night. Using the example that I gave and I did a whole discussion on his lecture on pruning shears of revision, which I recommend you watch. I'll put a link in the description. And using the imagination exercise, you can apply this to revising any experiences that you have throughout the day that appear to deny your assumption, and cleanse them out of your consciousness, release them from your subconscious, so that the next day you feel more in alignment and in a greater degree of internal power-based persistence of your assumption. He says, men believe in the reality of the external world because they do not know how to focus and condense their powers to penetrate its thin crust. Strangely enough, it is not difficult to penetrate this view of the senses. To remove the veil of the senses, we do not employ great effort. The objective world vanishes as we turn our attention away from it. We have only to concentrate on the state desired to mentally see it, but to give reality to it so that it will become an objective fact, we must focus our attention upon the desired state until it has all the sensory vividness and feeling of reality. This can appear to be challenging if we had a day in which we experience 5 sensory data that denies our assumption. We call this discouragement. We don't believe that it will be brought forth. This is an opportunity to develop the ability to persist, which is an important factor in creating success. Thus, at the end of the night, we can reflect upon the various conversation experiences that we had with 5 sensory data and revise it in our imagination. Going into our imagination in a state akin to sleep and playing it out in the ideal way that we wished it would have played out, which is in alignment with our assumption. Perhaps if you're building a business and you experience rejection in the propositions that you've made with your prospects or other members of your team, and as a result you felt denial of the assumption. So then you go into your imagination and you imagine yourself having a conversation in the spirit of harmony, benefit for them and benefit for you. And through this conversation, a deal is brought forth in which you receive the compensation and they receive the service. You repeat this process over and over again, engaging your senses in your imagination in a state akin to sleep as you fall asleep, and this information impresses on the subconscious mind. And what you'll notice is on the next day, you will be in a greater alignment. You will find that people will respond to you in alignment with what you have impressed on your subconscious mind. You'll also notice that your inner conversations, your thoughts, emotions, and behaviors will reflect this. And you do this with whatever shows up throughout the day that appears to deny your assumption. Again, the key word is appears to deny your assumption, understanding that this appearance is really just past programming. So what we're doing is we're revising the past. He says, it seems that it's real, that I actually did experience it, and I have found from my experience that these revised days, if really lived, will change my tomorrows. When I meet people tomorrow that today disappointed me, they will not tomorrow, for in me I have changed the very nature of that being. And having changed them, he bears witness tomorrow of the change that took place within me. Why? Because entire reality is us externalized. When we are at the level of consciousness of understanding how people, environment, circumstance, and information reflect the consciousness within, we make the changes within the consciousness within. And then what we'll find is that we are, to a higher degree, able to stay persistent in the assumption because we realize, with confidence and faith, that all change happens in the inner world, and the outer world is a reflection of the inner world you pushed out. Thus, we wake up the next day with opportunity and excitement to look upon the day and cross-reference and find anything that persists in the opposite direction of the assumption. Evolve the programming within using imagination, encouraging ourselves and surrounding ourselves with information that is related and in harmony with our assumption via mental diets, upon the cross-reference and reflection of the world being an externalization of the world within, and thus we forgive our past. We let go of our past if it's not in alignment through the process of revision, and this process repeats again and again and again as we develop a higher degree of persistence in our assumption. If you want to copy this mind map, the link is in the description. Thank you very much for watching. I'll talk to you soon. Take care.